Welcome in, everybody, to the Sports Experience Podcast. I am your host, Dom DiTolla, here at Engle Studio with my co-host,
Chris Quinn.
All right, let's get into today's podcast. Very famous pitcher, Major League Baseball, by the name of Nolan Ryan.
Yeah, I would say he was probably the greatest pitcher of his era.
Yeah, or one of the greatest pitchers of his era.
I was going to say, he came from the era of golden pitchers.
Yeah.
And golden showers. I'm just kidding. But he was definitely in this era of 3 or 4 great pitchers.
Yeah. And they nicknamed him the Nolan Ryan Express.
That's how I know him. I saw some
Ryan
other...
Express.
Yeah, the Ryan Express. I saw some other nicknames, and I was like, I never heard that one.
No.
But...
That's the most famous one.
Yep.
That's the most famous one. You know, fireballer from Alvin, Texas.
Yep. I saw one that called him Big Tex, and I was like, nobody called him Big Tex. Everyone called him the Ryan Express. Damn it.
Every time I think of Nolan Ryan, I think of that old, what's it called? The Real Men of Genius, the Bud Light commercials.
Yep.
And one of them was Way Too Proud of Texas Guy.
Yes.
Like, that is Nolan Ryan.
Yes.
Like, and it's not like in an asshole-ish way. It's just this guy is Texas through and through.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
Just amazing pitcher. Like you said, one of the best of his era. Born January 31st, 1947 in Refugio, Texas. Moved to Alvin, Texas, where he still has a home there. I mean, guy never wants to leave.
I love that. He pretty much was just like, I'm going to move there, stay there for the rest of my life.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. Great baseball player. Great at actually a lot of sports growing up.
I was surprised he actually wanted to play basketball.
Yeah. Just, 6'2", 175 pounds, which is decent size for back in those days. Now, kind of a little bit rail thin, but like still even for baseball, you would never think a guy that size could throw at the velocity he could.
Yes.
And funny story, he actually ended up focusing on baseball because in high school, because Texas high school football, I mean, that's Friday Night Lights. That's their version of non-Jesus religion.
That's the show.
In one of the games he got hurt, one of the running backs ran over him. He was playing defensive back. It was actually Norm Bulash, who was a good running back for the Colts in the 70s.
Yeah.
And after that, I'm going to go on the mound and start throwing 100 miles an hour.
Well, it's one of those things where I bet in sports you're just like, that guy is at a level above me. I need to start playing a different sport.
Yeah, or just, I'm so athletic, let me try something that doesn't have me run over by a large individual.
Exactly.
And pitched fantastically in high school, drafted out of high school in the 12th round by the New York Mets.
Yeah.
Red Muff, the scout who found him, said he was the hardest throwing pitcher he'd ever seen. And for those of you who don't know, this is 1965, so the Mets are an expansion team in 62. And the amazing Mets, they're horrible. They're just god-awful. And for the scout to say that, for him to have looked at guys like Tom Seaver and Jerry Koosman, who were in the Mets rotation and kind of boxed out Ryan, unfortunately, in New York, for him to say something like that is pretty darn incredible.
Yeah. Something that I found interesting, because when he played AA and AAA ball in like the Carolina leagues, he said that he would constantly throw as hard as he can, because he said that was the only way he knew how to play baseball.
Yeah.
And there are these guys in those leagues that are like, I'm not stepping in. I'm not leaning in against Nolan Ryan. Are you crazy? And
yeah,
a lot of the guys would literally not dig in against him because he threw so hard, and he wasn't as accurate as he was.
Very wild.
He was very wild.
He was like the non-AIDS version of Charlie Sheen in Major League.
There you go. That's a perfect...
And he was much more... I mean, he was notoriously wild throughout his career, although he's the strikeout leader for Major League Baseball. He's also, with 5,714, he is also the all-time walks leader at 2,795.
So he definitely lacked control early on, and of course, like throughout his entire career, because he just threw with everything he had.
And this was an era, and it worked to his advantage, oddly enough, because this was an era when pitchers were still allowed to throw inside.
Yes.
This is where you could throw brushback pitches, and he could throw unintentional brushback pitches.
Exactly.
And
you see that curve coming right at you, and it snaps back across the plate.
Oh, man, just absolutely incredible. But his wildness, oddly enough, and we'll get into this, he threw 7 no-hitters during his career. That is a major league record that no one can even touch.
No.
But the reason they're no hitters and not perfect games is he was walking guys or hitting batters during these games.
Yes.
One of his no hitters, he walked 8 batters.
Which is crazy for a no-hitter. A lot of the time, you see these guys have complete control that day.
Yeah.
And they have like maybe 2 walks or, something like that. And he was just wild.
And it was crazy because he threw 12 one-hitters and 18 two-hitters.
Yeah.
But he never put it together for just one game, 27 up, 27 down. Something else was happening with him.
He did have, I think he's the only pitcher ever to have an immaculate inning in both AL and NL because so an immaculate inning is 9 pitches, all strikes.
3 strikes, you're out.
3 strikes, you're out. So 3 outs. So he pretty much like the perfect amount of pitches. But even doing that, he was still not as accurate as many of the pitchers of his era.
No, and he wasn't. And getting into his Mets career, that's kind of what cost him, but also really benefited him in terms of where he ended up. Because by 1969, he's like a really full-time player for the Mets. And if you know nothing about baseball, the 69 Mets were like the Cinderella team of Cinderella teams. But the problem was, for Nolan Ryan at least, although he had a 6-3 record that year, he was kind of the rotation swing guy. Because you had Tom Seaver, Hall of Famer, Jerry Koosman, All-Star, Gary Gentry. They had like a bevy of young pitchers because they were so bad that they had accumulated all this talent because of their poor record. So Ryan's kind of forced into a relief and starting role. They kind of don't know where to put him. His control's not really there. But then the 69 playoffs happen, and that's where he really ended up shining. Because in the 69 NLCS, he comes into Game 3 against the Braves. They're already up 2-0 in a best-of-5. He pitches 7 innings of relief in that game. Gets the win.
And shows everybody that he could come into a pressure situation and dominate.
And have it. Yeah, just have what it takes. As that swing guy, that's what you need. And then in the 69 World Series, which is arguably one of the greatest upsets in World Series history against the Baltimore Orioles, he pitched 2 1/3 innings of relief and got a World Series save for the Mets, who ended up winning.
Yep.
And what makes this even more sad, though, for Nolan Ryan is that is the only World Series game he ever participated in.
Yeah. So let's get into the Mets trading him to the Angels now.
Yep, December 10th, 1971.
He got traded with a big package deal for a shortstop. What was the shortstop's name?
The trade was for Jim Fregosi, who played shortstop, and a lot of other players who were kind of just throw-ins because the Mets in 73 ended up winning the pennant over there's just an aside, let me just go here.
Please.
The 73 NLCS between the Mets and the Reds was very interesting because the Mets finished 83 and 79, yet still won the NL East. This is the Reds right before the Big Red Machine era.
Yep.
They were heavily favored. They won over 100 games. And in one of the games, Pete Rose, from previous podcast, had a takeout slide against Bud Harrelson. I believe it was Game 3. Took him out, and a huge brawl erupted, and Rose beat the crap out of a guy way smaller than him.
But that's kind of the era of that baseball was the takeout slide, the inside pitch,
And while Fregosi did nothing for New York after coming over from the California Angels, where Ryan was traded, at the time that trade was thought to be, look, for the Mets, we need a shortstop.
It was thought to be a good trade.
We need a shortstop. And Ryan can't crack our rotation. He's just too wild. We can't figure out what to do with this guy. He might be good, but we need a shortstop. Here you go, Angels. And it was probably the best thing that ever happened to Nolan Ryan.
Well, in hindsight, I think people say it's the worst trade that the Mets ever did. But for Nolan Ryan, it was the best. And in the time when it happened, nobody was looking at it like, oh, my God, I can't believe they just let Nolan Ryan go. It was like, oh, they're letting their 4th pitcher and some AAA guys go for a starting shortstop.
Yeah,
it's very interesting. But then when he goes to the Angels, that's when he becomes Nolan Ryan that we know.
Exactly, and a lot that played into it was the fact, okay, I'm in California, a little bit closer to Texas. Yep. I don't have to do military duty because he had to do some military duty up until his trade to California. So instead of flying back to Texas to New York, he can just stay in one spot. He enters a rotation that's wide open that he can be the man of, and goddamn right he was the man of.
I was going to say they gave him the ball as much as they possibly could, and I think that's what you see with the amount of strikeouts he has, but they pretty much were like, hey, you're our first ball, you're our first pitcher on the rotation, and it just gave him the innings that he needed to find his control.
Yeah, it just gave him the experience. He wasn't being shuttled back from the bullpen to the rotation, back to the bullpen, back to the rotation. Like, he was the guy. And his first few seasons there, he really proved it.
Oh, yeah. Well, I want to talk about his first season.
Yeah.
Because his first season, he broke the record for strikeouts.
Yeah, for in a game.
In a game. Or no, for a season, I thought.
Yeah, for a season, yeah.
Yeah.
And in that game, he pitched 11 innings to
yes.
beat Sandy Koufax, which is, Koufax thought it was unbreakable.
Yes.
Unbreakable.
It's one of those records where when a guy sets it and he says it's unbreakable, and then you have a guy like Nolan Ryan come in and really change the game.
And not only that, he led the league in strikeouts. I mean, granted, he did pitch 25 seasons in the league. He led the league in strikeouts 11 times.
Yeah.
11 times. That's utterly insane. Hey, everybody. Just want to take a quick break to let you know that our Sports Experience podcast is brought to you by Engle Studio here, and they're here in Tucson for all your recording needs.
I thought it was crazy that he broke the strikeout record for the season the year they brought in the DH.
Yeah.
So literally you don't have that number 9 to take off. You know what I mean? Where a pitcher comes up and you're just like, all right, I'm just going to throw curveballs until he dies. But it's one of those things where the DH was introduced. So now throughout the entire pretty much lineup.
You have to pitch to a whole lineup now.
Exactly.
You have to make them hit, and they weren't hitting. He threw 4 no-hitters in California.
It's crazy.
There's a funny story. One of them, they were playing the Tigers, and he had gone 8 2/3, so he's right about to do it. Nobody could touch him. Only guys who get on base are via walks.
Yep.
Norm Cash, a really good hitter for the Tigers, is 2 outs, bottom of the 9th, no hits, and he comes from the on-deck circle, and he has a piano leg, and he steps into the batter's box.
Love it.
And the umpire's like, you need to get a bat. He's like, why? No one else is hitting him all day. And to Cash's credit, he did make contact and flew out to make the last out. But just like, that's the kind of stuff that Ryan had. And like, to explain it to a baseball fan, he was clocked at the time. Obviously, you have people like Aroldis Chapman throwing like 107 now.
Yeah.
But he threw 100.8 miles an hour. But then you couple that, he was only a 3-pitch pitcher. He only had his I shouldn't say only. I mean, they were some of the greatest pitches ever. But he had a fastball, and he had a devastating 12-6 curveball. And when I say 12-6, what that means is, like a clock, it goes 12-6, up, down. Like when you get a good break on that curveball, it's not so much a slider which sweeps across the plate, it just drops.
Yeah, people think it's a fastball coming, and then it flat out just drops off.
Yeah, it drops off the table just because of the movement.
Yeah.
Only he's throwing it like 85. Most guys at the time were throwing it like 75. And then he had this circle changeup to go with it that looks like a fastball.
Well, he didn't have the changeup forever, right? He kind of brought it.
No, he kind of had to develop it.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a great out pitch, because not only is it not your fastball, you change speed so much that hitters have no idea. And it kind of had, as he was describing, like a screwball cut kind of into a right-handed batter.
Yeah.
Because he was a right-handed pitcher.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it messes with their rhythm so much. So he's normally 98 for his fastball.
Yeah.
Like, that's an average, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And then out of nowhere, and this is something that I saw, a great changeup needs to drop 12 to 15 miles per hour off. And they were saying his dropped like 15 to like 18 all the time. So guys were so far out in front
Swinging
of it.
at air.
Yeah, they would literally see it. They would swing it and see it go past them, like, damn it.
And that's the thing. That's what makes it so impressive, because, like, his bread and butter is his gas, but everyone who's at the major league level can hit a fastball, no matter how fast it goes. You can put wood on it if you're at that elite level. But the movement he had on those pitches, and just his ability to throw that fast and just baffle hitters for so long, is what made him such an interesting player. Yeah,
his fastball was what people say was the greatest rising fastball ever.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably the most accurate description of his fastball, because it's just one of those pitches that comes in at a certain level and just starts going up and up. And he talks about his grip is actually different than a lot of other players' grips because his hands were a little bit smaller.
Exactly.
Which I thought was interesting, and it made him throw that much harder.
Yeah, he had more, his fingers were shorter than most guys, and he was able to kind of find a way to use that to his advantage.
Yeah.
And but California from the 72 to 79 seasons, just an absolute beast.
He was a beast, but I wanted to bring this up. There were a lot of guys, or a lot of people in the baseball media that were saying that he was almost like a flash in the pan, or not even a flash in the pan, but like if he went to a better team, he wouldn't have that many strikeouts, that many. Which
I don't buy at all, because you're pitcher, master, and commander.
I know. I never understood that, but looking at the media back in the day, they were saying stuff like that when he was in the Angels, and then he went to the Astros.
That was a reason, yeah. I mean, they won the division title, oddly enough, with Jim Fregosi as their head coach in 79.
I love that. He comes back and coaches them. That's so great.
Their GM didn't want anything more to do with them because they're not breaking through.
Yes.
I mean, they had one season he was there. He won 22 games, I think, in 74 or 75, and the team only won 68.
Crazy.
He won a third of those. Like Steve Carlton had a similar season with the Phillies, I think in the 80s.
Yeah.
But that's unreal.
It's unreal.
But he won in a freaking 8-season span, 138 games. Just ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Well, I want to say how ridiculous it is because the Angels were a horrible team.
And then they finally started getting better right as he left.
Yeah. And so he went into free agency. So
yeah, he was the first big free agent.
Yes. Which I found to be interesting. Was he the first $1 million man?
Yeah, first $1 million man. Yeah, because Pete Rose, the same season or season before, had 800,000.
Yep.
And then he signed like Ryan signed like a 4-year, $4 million contract.
Yeah.
And definitely helped the Astros, because in 80 when he gets there, they win the division title and lose to the Phillies in the LCS. I don't know if you've ever watched it, but that's one of the most exciting league championship series in baseball. The Astros actually really, really blew that series hard.
Yeah.
Like Philadelphia had to have like a miracle comeback in Game 5 to just pull it out. But and then 81, they win one of the halves of the strike-shortened year.
Yep.
And this was a really good season for Nolan, because although they played like 100 games or so, he went 11-5, but his ERA, this is what is completely outrageous, was 1.69.
Yep.
Anything under 3 at that time was considered good. Now anything under 4 is considered good, but like 1.69?
Yeah, half of what is considered good, pretty much. It was such a great ERA, and he definitely in the Astro uniform, he kind of kept a great ERA. It's one of those things where throughout his entire career, he just got better.
Yeah, like he just stayed more consistent.
More consistent.
And that's a huge testament to his physical fitness. That's a huge testament to his ability to take in everything mental about the game.
His mental focus, I think, has to be off the charts, because the way he would set up batters throughout an entire game, throughout his entire career, nobody really unlocked what he had: fastball, curveball, changeup. And that was it.
And he won over 100 games for them. And they made the playoffs 3 times. And in 86, when they lost to the amazing Mets, they just never ended up breaking through with him. Mm-hmm. But it was good for him because he moves back to Texas, like way too proud of Texas guy. And, he's kind of finally found a home.
Yeah.
But, by the, I believe it's the 88 season, which is his last in Houston, he's up there in age.
Yeah.
He's 41 years old.
And at this point, he has 6 no-hitters?
Yeah. Well, he has 5.
He has 5.
He threw 1 for Houston to break the record.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Okay, he has 5. So I thought that was interesting when he breaks the record of no-hitters, because I feel like when he went to the Astros, that's when all of his naysayers, even though there probably wasn't a lot, that's when they really just shut up, because he put it through his entire career. Like there's no season that you can look at and be like, he wasn't that good in that season. There just isn't.
This is a guy who's pitched most of his late 30s on competitive teams and was a huge part of that rotation.
Yes.
I mean, just sailing on through, just consistency. People will knock him for being a compiler, but it's like, this guy's going out and kicking ass for you every year. He's good for this amount of wins, this amount of strikeouts. And he's in his late 30s, now early 40s.
Well, he's one of the only pitchers, I think it's him and Koufax and maybe Walter Johnson, that has more strikeouts than innings pitched. So it's one of those things where he's a compiler, but he compiled
good stats.
Great stats.
Yeah.
It's not like he had, and I keep bringing this up, but it's not like he played horrible ever. He was like consistently a good or great pitcher.
Yeah, and you can guarantee on those stats every year for him. He just had some unfortunate instances in the postseason, post-Amazing Mets, where the team around him melted down, or he maybe had an off day. It's not like he choked or anything. It was just the other team found a way to win.
It's just one of those things, and you see that in sports where you have these teams that have the entire makeup of being champions, and they just can't make it.
Yeah.
It's just they're one step off.
Yeah, I mean, those 80 and 86 Astros teams were definite World Series teams without banging on trash cans, and they just didn't end up making it happen.
Yeah, sometimes the luck is against you. Sometimes, it's crazy.
Yeah. But he finds a way. He wants to continue pitching after he leaves Houston.
Which is crazy. He's 41.
41, and the Texas Rangers sign him, Texas's other professional baseball team.
I was going to say, he when he was looking for teams, he was pretty much like, hey, I want to be in Texas or one of the neighboring states.
Yeah, and none of the neighboring states have pro baseball.
Exactly.
So. Or I shouldn't say pro baseball, but Major League Baseball.
Yes.
But, it was there.
Those isotopes, damn it.
Yeah. Albuquerque Isotopes. No, I mean, he pitched for him for 5 seasons and won 51 games.
Yeah.
Over 10 games a season.
That's the thing. Even in his 40s, late or early 40s, he's still a fantastic pitcher.
And he gets his 5,000th strikeout while he's with the Rangers, home game.
The 5,000 strikeout I thought was interesting. I meant to write down the player.
It was Ricky Henderson.
Was it Ricky Henderson?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Ricky, when they were warming up, he goes, "You're not going to get 5,000 on me."
Yep.
Oh, it was so
typical
great.
Ricky Henderson.
Yeah, and
he's great.
That's the stuff I love in baseball. The friendly shit talking.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't necessarily care all that much, but I don't necessarily like the
negative back and forth.
The negative back and forth, but like how Pete Rose is like, this is a great game, isn't it? Like, to bring up an old podcast. But it's just one of those things in sports where the guys who are having fun, you can see it.
Well, and he had that happen on his 4,000 strikeout with Danny Heap of the Mets. Because he came up to him, he's like, "You're not going to give me for 4,000."
Oh, yeah.
Guess what he does? He goes right out there and does it.
That's great.
But yeah, no, he. It's funny to think because in his last no-hitter, the 7th one, they're playing the Blue Jays.
Yep.
And this is like Toronto's ascending into a power in the American League. And this just shows you how long he pitched in Major League Baseball, because the last out of that last no-hitter was my favorite baseball player, actually, of all time, Robbie Alomar, second baseman. And his teammate in California in the 70s was Robbie Alomar's dad.
He has a bevy of fathers and sons that he has struck out.
Yeah.
Both Griffeys.
Yep.
Both Bonzes. Both, I don't remember the other one. Maybe a Luz.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah,
He just has, and he has this whole list of guys that have throughout the era of 70, 80s that he struck out.
Yeah, the league's best.
The league's best.
And you never, as a hitter, you could never get comfortable against him because of the era that he played in. He's going to throw high and tight. We might not know where it's going.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Bull Durham.
Kind of, yeah, Nuke Lelouch.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know where the next ball's going.
But he pitched till he was 46.
Yeah,
46,
I love
93.
that.
It's amazing.
It's one of those things where these guys who play into their 40s are different than, because a lot of the guys hit their peak at 35. I would say that's really where you see the decline start to hit. And there are these guys, Tom Brady. There's a couple of soccer players like Andrew and Pirlo. There are these guys that play into their 40s and they just don't drop off.
No, I mean, it's testament to physical conditioning. If you think of Barry Bonds, it's a testament to maybe something else. But
yes.
Nolan Ryan was very open about his training regimen. He was very exercise bike was his big thing. The exercise bike was his big thing, and kind of just Because building yourself as a baseball player, you're not necessarily looking to get jacked, particularly if you're a pitcher, but you want to be in good physical conditioning, have good flexibility, that type of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And he kept that through his whole career. It's crazy.
You want to talk about August 4th, 1993?
Yes, I do. And it's one of these things in baseball.
And this is like Nolan Ryan, like he's not a rah guy or like someone who's looking to, be a jerk to everybody. But,
no, but he brushes guys back.
Yeah.
So, and that batters will take that personally.
They'll take it personally, but especially as, the world moves into the 1990s and batters don't like it very much.
No.
And Nolan is an old school pitcher.
Exactly. And he's bringing his old school pitching to this new school, mentality.
And they're at Texas Stadium. Mind you, the team they're playing, the White Sox, they're 1-2 in the AL West race. They're number 1 and number 2.
Yeah.
Chicago's leading them. Nolan Ryan's on the mound. Getting kind of shelled. It's not his day. Robin Ventura, third baseman for the White Sox, all-star, very good player throughout the years, comes up, hits a single in the first inning, drives in a run. Second time at the plate, Nolan throws it inside and hits him. Robin doesn't take too kindly to that.
No, he does not.
He is a 26-year-old strapping man, and he says, "Game on, Grandpa," and he charges the mound. And you need to YouTube the shit out of this if you have never seen it because it is hilarious.
Well, this is like when you charge the mound in this era. I feel like it's different than now. Now it's almost like they square up.
Yeah.
Back then it was like, I am going to rip your face off. And it's like, whoa.
Ventura charges them out. Ryan's like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Ventura is like, I'm losing this game and this guy's charging the mound. So, Ventura charges him. Nolan Ryan gets him in a headlock. And apparently he credits this to have the ability to brand steers on his ranch in Texas, of course. He gets him in a headlock and starts punching him in the head.
Yeah, just starts hitting him.
And all benches clear, everybody starts fighting. And what's funny about this is they don't throw Ryan out of the game. They toss Ventura, and it pisses off the White Sox coach, Gene Lamont, and he gets tossed.
Yeah.
And the White Sox are super salty about it. Like the Cy Young Award winner that year, Jack McDowell, for the White Sox, was really complaining after the game, like, oh, the umps let Nolan Ryan get away with everything. He pitches inside. Like, I'm surprised this hasn't happened more. I want a piece of him, blah, 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 acting all tough. But it's hilarious to think a 46-year-old man, a guy almost half his age, charges him, and he lays down the law.
I was going to say, he was 20 years his senior, and literally he comes out, and the cattle thing is perfect because literally he almost ropes him, puts him into a headlock, and then literally just starts pounding on his head.
And the whole fracas keeps going.
Yeah.
And you're just like,
I can't believe they didn't eject him from that game. The White Sox are correct on that, but it's one of those things
you
where...
eject both players.
Yes, you eject both players. But I feel like they're like, no, he's 46. Give him a break. It's like when you catch your grandpa stealing.
Yes, it's like, just let him go.
Just let him go. Let him do his thing. He's dying.
It's like when a young kid gets pissed at their dad when they're like 3. And they like run at him, and he just like puts his hand out on his head. Like I remember, I was playing baseball with my dad in the backyard. I was probably like 3, and this is a good dad story if you've never heard it. My dad, this is like after Rob Dibble. We'll have to do one on the Nasty Boys. He was a reliever for the Reds when they won that World Series. He was through about the same speed as Nolan Ryan, but during one of the games in like '91 against the Cubs, Doug DeCenzo laid down a bunt. And Dibble was pissed, so instead of throwing it to first, he threw the ball at him. And Dibble's like already an insane person to begin with. So my dad were in the backyard, and he's like, now batting Dominic DiTolla, pitching Rob Dibble. And he pelts me with the ball, just pegs me. So I throw off my helmet and throw the bat at him and miss, and I'm running towards him, and my dad just sticks his hand out on my head, and I'm like swinging like one of those old Looney Tunes cartoons.
Sure.
But that's what this fight was like. That's that's the only thing I can think of when I see that.
It was like a dad, telling his son, no, we're not fighting today, or at least you're not fighting me.
I pegged you. This is hilarious enough.
Exactly.
But no, he finished his career with some incredible milestones, though. I mean, 300 win club, which after Randy Johnson, you will never see another pitcher the way the staffs are constructed now.
Well, we were talking about this. We probably will never see these records broken because of the way baseball is now. The pitch count, they're not letting guys complete games like they were. They're not, it's just everything is stacking up against players nowadays breaking these records.
Yeah, no, I mean, the strikeouts won't be touched. No one will ever get that. The walks record won't be touched either.
Just because of pitches.
Yeah.
Just the pitch count. They're just not allowed to throw that many pitches.
And the no-hitters
could be, but I highly doubt it.
The only way I see that broken is you have a shit ton of combined no-hitters because guys aren't finishing games.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen multiple coaches multiple managers in the last 10 to 15 years take out guys in the middle of no-hitters in like the sixth inning and put in a reliever. And sometimes that works. Like that's why you've seen today a lot more combined no-hitters than, ever before.
Yeah.
It's just the bullpen comes in or there was a great one, actually a Babe Ruth story, oddly enough, to go on a weird tangent. There was a game he was pitching in Boston, and the first batter of the game, he walks him, and he got pissed about the call not being a strike when he walked him, and the umpire threw him out of the game. Ernie Shore comes in to replace him, picks the guy off first base, and retires the next 26 in a perfect game.
Oh, that's so
It doesn't count as a perfect game, but it counts as a no-hitter. So
it's one of those things. You're just never going to see his records touched. And you're right with Randy Johnson being the closest. So I think he was like 800 strikeouts away or something like that. And I feel like he was the last pitcher to even come close.
And when you look at Randy Johnson, he still kind of started in that era. And his career arc is very similar to Ryan's in the respect that he really didn't get going until his mid to late 20s.
Yeah.
More so late 20s. Like he had a lot of lost seasons in Montreal before, and even early in Seattle before he got going. But Nolan Ryan, he pitched, I think, in 4 different decades.
Yeah. 60.
Randy Johnson at least 3, possibly 4, but Nolan Ryan pitched in 4 different decades.
Yeah.
And when you compile stats like that, and you don't have pitch counts, you don't have innings counts, you don't have Tommy John like it is now.
Yep.
You'll never see it again.
No, you'll never see a pitcher like this again.
And just so much fun to watch.
Yeah.
Just the amount of break on his pitches, the way that guys were just absolutely intimidated by him in the batter's box.
Well, that's what I was saying about the curveball, because he pitched inside so much, but then he would rip a curveball and it would look like it's coming straight at you and then snap back. And it's one of those things where I can't imagine how scary that is, thinking like Nolan Ryan's throwing 98 at the top of my back. You know what I mean? Like, it's a scary thought.
And when you're throwing it faster than everyone, because usually when you throw sliders, they have more velocity on it than a curveball.
Yes.
But it doesn't break the same. It breaks across. It doesn't break down. And Ryan's was like the classic 12-6 where it would just drop.
Yeah.
It would just drop every time, which how are you going to hit that with that ball going that fast?
I don't know. And then when he brought in the changeup, I feel like, because they said that he brought in the changeup at the end of his Angels, beginning Astros, he really perfected it. And I feel like that's when you just had no idea what he was going to throw.
Yeah. And I mean, there are definitely guys with like 4 or 5 different pitches. He only had 3, but they were like at the top level.
I was going to say 3, but he was throwing them the best anybody could throw them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And absolutely. And it's one of those things that's like where like football teams are like, we're just going to keep it as simple as we can. I feel like he was just like, I'm just going to keep it as simple as I can and do this at the best that I can.
Yeah. And he did it for so long. So long.
Yeah. That's why I would say he's the greatest pitcher. It's hard to say because of the Negro Leagues, because they didn't keep.
Yeah.
It's just a different, almost like a different game. But I would say he's the greatest Major League Baseball pitcher.
I wouldn't say he's the greatest, but I would definitely rank him top 10, top 15.
Yeah.
I mean, of all time. Yeah.
Well, I just like his consistency.
Yeah. His consistency was great. People knock him a lot, though, because he was in the golden age of pitchers. He never won a Cy Young Award, which is given to each of the league's, most voted best pitcher. He never won a Cy Young Award. He never won an MVP. But you feared him when he stepped in the batter's box.
Yeah.
I mean, when you saw that he was pitching against you today, okay, I'm going 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts.
Exactly. It was just one of those things that you just kind of took.
Lost in the I kind of compare it, although he didn't pitch for as long, like his regular season numbers and the lack of accolades despite being really good. And he's probably one of the best postseason pitchers ever is Curt Schilling. Like Curt Schilling, if he wasn't such a douchebag as far as offending people.
I was going to say, I liked him before he opened his mouth.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you took that away, the guys that they've let into the Hall of Fame recently, like a Mike Mussina, you know, he was far superior to them and far superior to almost every pitcher all time in the postseason as far as how successful he was.
Yeah.
So and like Nolan Ryan started off his career kind of slow, didn't really hit that groove until he got that chance.
Yeah.
And I always love sports stories of guys like that. You know, the guy has the talent, he has everything. It's not all come together, but something breaks his way as far as getting a chance, whether it's on that team or somewhere else that benefits him. And always mad respect for people that take advantage of those chances when they're given to him. Like he didn't squander it. I mean, he went to a bad team in the Angels, but he's like, I'm the effing man right now.
Yes.
Frank Tanana and I are going to pitch and dominate on a team that wins 76 games, but we're going to dominate.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you have to take the opportunities that are given. It's not like he was like, hey, you're going to be the New York Yankees #1, whatever. It's like, hey, you really need to carve out your own place here, and he did.
Yeah, I mean, you're not gonna leap over Seaver and Kuzman and all those guys in the rotation. You're gonna be relegated to swing duty and then spot starting, and
that it's one of those things where he shouldn't have been playing at the Mets. You know what I mean? His control wasn't there. They probably maybe should have given him more innings, but it's one of those things where the opportunity that he took when he went to the Angels it made him the baseball player that he was.
When he's talked about it, because he was an executive for both the Rangers and the Astros in their front offices after he stopped playing, and he said throughout his career he kind of held a grudge against the Mets for dealing him and not really giving him a chance. But as he looked back and he's like, okay, I understand the business of baseball. I understand why my control was an issue and I wasn't consistent. Like he understood it finally.
Yeah.
He finally got that perspective on it.
When he hit that front office when he was CEO or whatever he was of the Rangers.
Yeah. He must have been super like pissed pitching against the Mets though when he went to the National League.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. It's one of those things in baseball and in sports where I love those grudges that players hold against their ex-teams.
Oh, yeah. Did you ever hear about Ken Griffey Jr.'s against the Yankees?
Yep.
With the George Steinbrenner telling him to leave and making it a little bit.
Steinbrenner was the worst GM of that era.
Oh, the worst GM. He's like the Jerry Jones of baseball.
Yes.
Great owner as far as spending money and wanting to win at all costs. Horrible evaluator of talent.
One of my favorite Seinfeld ones was George is dead.
Yeah.
And he shows up and literally his dad is just like, how could you trade Jay Buhner? He's got an arm like a rocket.
You traded Jay Buhner for Ken Phelps.
I love, like, it's one of my favorite. It's just like his son's dead and he's just like, how could you trade Jay Buhner?
What did you trade Jay Buhner for?
It's so great.
Frank Costanza. Rest in peace, Jerry Stiller. That character was... Oh,
one of the best.
Oh my God,
I love Jerry Stiller.
Yeah, you traded Fred McGriff.
Everyone was telling me, and I forget even who he was referencing.
Everyone was telling me Ken Phelps. Oh, and if you have time, look up a picture of Ken Phelps. It is amazing. 80s mustache, glasses. Oh yeah,
classic look.
Dude, he looks like the plumber's assistant in every 80s porno. And he's got like that beer gut and kind of like dumpy frame, like 80s baseball frame.
Yeah. It's great, man.
Ken Phelps, shout out.
All right, that's the Sports Experience Podcast. I'm Chris Quinn at C. Quinn Comedy.
I'm Dom DiTolla at DiTolla Dominic.
Thank you all. We have episodes every Wednesday and Friday, and we record at Engle Studios. Thank you.